Ah man, the 2015 NHL Entry Draft. How great was that draft for the Bruins? Spoiler alert, not too great, but we still have ourselves a conversation to be had about this draft and one of the players that was taken in this selection. The reason we're harping on Boston so much because of 2015 is because from picks 13, 14, and 15, the Bruins had 3 straight first-round picks. They had draft picks from, I believe it was the Dougie Hamilton trade, as well as the Milan Lucic trade, not to mention their own first-round pick too, so the Boston Bruins did have themselves a pretty good run for 13 to 15, except the players they selected were not really among the consensus. They took defenseman Jakub Zboril, they took forward Jake DeBrusk, and forward Zach Senyshyn. Senyshyn has played 14 NHL games, Zboril has played 52, and Jake DeBrusk is Jake DeBrusk. Right after, you have Matthew Barzal to the Islanders, Kyle Connor to the Jets, you have Thomas Chabot to the Ottawa Senators, skipping a few, you have Colin White with the Sens, Ilya Samsonov with the Capitals, Brock Besser to Vancouver, Travis Konechny, Philadelphia, Roslovic, Winnipeg, and yeah, this selection of 3 was kind of a big whiff, but at the very least, you got yourselves a consistent NHL caliber guy in Jake DeBrusk. Right now, he is 6 feet, 194, 25 years old, and he is making $3.6 million till the end of this season. His qualifying offer, as this contract will expire, will be $4.41 million, as the circumstances of his contract make it so that that's the number. Hey, you can read puckpedia.com. I'm not smart enough to actually comprehend it. But Jake DeBrusk, for the past few years, has been a consistent Boston Bruin. He has 6 points in 17 games played this season after being a 40-ish point guy with the Bruins in earlier years. Recently, it's gotten to a point where you could start to see the cracks starting to show in the profile he has on this team. Is he a skilled hockey player, a hard forechecker, and a guy that actually works for his results? Yes, but has he really been given all the opportunities to be put in a position to succeed? Has he been given that development time to really capture what it is that makes him special and expand upon that? Honestly, I'd argue not. The Boston Bruins have been a very good NHL franchise the past few years, and guys like Jake DeBrusk, younger players stepping into this organization, are never really given that big of a platform to shine unless, you know, they're David Pastrnak or Brad Marchand. The development of prospects and young guys within the Boston system over the past few years hasn't been particularly great, but their good guys are really good, which is why they're still able to compete and stay as one of the top teams in the league the past few seasons. For Jake DeBrusk, though, this dichotomy has been so bad for him that this season, after putting up those 6 points in 17 games, he actually requested a trade. This is what TSN's Ryan Rishaug said the other day. I spoke with Rick Valette, the agent for DeBrusk. He confirmed that DeBrusk has asked for a trade over the weekend. It's felt a change of scenery moving forward would be beneficial, and DeBrusk will remain with the team while the Bruins try to facilitate the request. Now, this is a really interesting piece of information to come out at this point in time. Jake DeBrusk has been involved in trade rumors for a while now. We even made videos a few months ago talking about Edmonton and Calgary, whether or not these teams would want this Alberta guy, and whether or not they could use his services, stuff like that. He has always been in the realm of the trade conversation, especially since his contract does expire this season. You have yourselves a guy who in Boston right now isn't really being used the best way that he could be. You see very frequently other guys who have different skill sets or maybe less skill in general being placed over DeBrusk in the depth chart, and DeBrusk seems to have gotten the short end of the stick in this respect. It is also kind of interesting because he does have that label of being a quote-unquote bust, especially considering the guys that went after him in the draft, not to mention the other 2 guys that surrounded him in the 2015 draft with Boston as well. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, Jake DeBrusk is a solid NHL player. Sure, is he capable of maybe 30-40 points in a season? Yeah, but that's not a bad thing. He may not have been the best pick available at 13th, 14th, or 15th when the Bruins selected their guys, but is he still the best player amongst this crop? Yes. Here are some tweets going over other teams that might be involved in the DeBrusk trade talks. Bruce Garriock said this: I believe the Sens have held talks with the Bruins on DeBrusk in the offseason. My guess is they circle back. There's one team right there, Ottawa. This is what Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman said on the Friedman Show today, or excuse me, not the Friedman Show, the Jeff Merrick Show. How much of a marketplace is there for Jake DeBrusk right now? How much are teams willing to pay for him? I think there's a good market, Friedman says. Either DeBrusk is going for a player that helps them now, or he is going in a move that allows them to get something that helps them now. What exactly does that mean? Well, that means either a trade for another player that can help them, or a trade for a draft pick or something that the Bruins could then leverage into another trade for another player that could help them out in the now as well. Seattle's got a guy there who had been really good last year in Winnipeg and hasn't been a great fit early on in Mason Appleton. That's the kind of guy I could see Boston saying, you know what, that was a good player in Winnipeg last year. That guy would make a lot of sense for us. So there you go. There's another team involved, Seattle. This is what Ryan Rishaug said. Early returns on DeBrusk trade being available have been substantial. As many as 8 teams have already reached out and inquired about the player, and more are expected today. Nick Kyprios went out there and had his own piece too. There is no shortage of interest for NHL Bruins Jake DeBrusk, including the Oilers and the Flames. Also in the mix, the Carolina Hurricanes and the St. Louis Blues. Now, everybody in Edmonton is kind of memeing about the same idea of, okay, Jake DeBrusk is going to get traded to Edmonton. First off, his dad, Louis DeBrusk, is always on the Oilers' home broadcast, so it makes a lot of sense, geographically speaking. And secondly, Oilers fans I've been seeing are memeing a ton about Zach Kassian being a potential return. Why would Zach Kassian be highlighted as a potential Boston Bruins target? I don't know. You tell me. I'm being sarcastic, by the way, because he kind of fits that mold that everybody kind of has built into their heads as to what a Boston Bruins hockey player exhibits, I guess. But all of a sudden, there are so many conversations to be had here with DeBrusk, and involving teams like Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, Seattle, St. Louis, and Carolina. It makes things super interesting when you consider just the overall profile that he has. In my opinion, if you gave Jake DeBrusk consistent top 6, middle 6 minutes, he probably would be a better player than 6 points in 17 games. As I did note, he does forecheck hard, he does have some skill, and he's not afraid to go out there and skate. It's just Boston hasn't really been a good fit for him. Honestly, because of how far back the trade rumors have gone, I kind of think that Don Sweeney messed this up big time, mostly because not trading DeBrusk when he hadn't publicly requested a trade and when his value was a lot higher seems like it probably should have been the better move back then. Now that he publicly wants out and everything is out there that he's producing little and he doesn't really like it there, now his value is lower. If I were to guess why the trade hasn't happened yet, I mean, a lot of Bruins fans that I've been seeing have been saying that Don Sweeney is trying to salvage what's left of that 2015 draft to not make it seem like they really did get the short end of the stick, and that Zaboral, Senyshyn, and DeBrusk were all noteworthy players that were good enough to at least be drafted. It's tough to justify with the other two, but for Jake DeBrusk, he was the... Oh my goodness, there's a big fire truck outside, and they're wailing the sirens. It's been like this the past 5 minutes. I've been trying to record and there isn't any silence to be held. I have to get this video out soon, so I'll just kind of continue. DeBrusk has been the only amongst the 3 selections that has had a significant NHL impact, and other teams definitely are aware of that. Other teams probably do notice, okay, this guy was a capable producer when he was, 2017, 2018, so 4 years ago when he's 21 years old. Now he's playing in a lower role. What's the price for that? Is this a second-round pick or a third-round pick because he's a declining asset, he's unhappy with where he is, and he hasn't been given playing time? Is it still a first-round caliber selection that would be worth this guy because he was a first-round pick back in 2015? Does that fit of Mason Appleton from Seattle actually work? And if that is the case, then do you want to do 1-for-1? Is it a 1-for-1 with a pick involved? What exactly is the return? The Boston Bruins haven't really made it a staple within their organization the past few years of getting draft picks and prospects that actually develop properly. So, do you want to touch that territory? Is it really something that the Boston Bruins would be interested in, or do they just want to go for another cup? I could understand it if it was any of these conclusions over here, but when it comes to Jake DeBrusk being the first domino that falls in this chain of current events, then I'm just really interested in seeing where he goes. So if you're a fan of the Blues, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Oilers, the Flames, the Senators, or the Kraken, let me know in the comments, what do you think about Jake DeBrusk and what is the most you would be willing to give up for this guy in a trade-like scenario? Do you want to give up your second or your third or a prospect that you had or some other guys that are in your organization too? Where does he fit in your lineup? Would you give him a top 6 role? Is he a middle 6 guy on your new team? If it's Seattle, I could imagine they can go out there and give him top 6 minutes because, why would they not? They have no reason not to. For other teams, it would be a little bit more difficult. For Edmonton, I mean, we know Louis DeBrusk is over there, so maybe there's a little bit of a bias, but I'm not really too sure. Same could be said about Calgary, Carolina, St. Louis. There's a lot of uncertainty there, but if you're a fan of any of these teams, let me know in the comments what do you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.